So I have a presentation that we're going to go through that's going to be about grants. I did want to say thank you to everyone who put some info about yourself in the chat. This is definitely a mixed experience group, which is awesome. So I hope that we can use this time, not just me talking, but also learning from each other. I would really love to hear, about things that you've had, experiences that you've had, also things that you're interested in. I do want this to be interactive, so please chime in. I can't see everyone on my screen at the same time, so while I'm presenting, but feel free to unmute yourself, at any point. But yes, so as Dorothy said, so I'm a poet, and I also work in grants. Hang on one second. My mouse is on the fritz. Okay. Anyway, I'm a poet and I work in grants at Columbia University. And for me, it just took me some time to learn grants, and it really took me a while to figure out, I think someone else said in the chat, it seems off-putting, it seems like a lot. And what I've come to learn over time is that it's really not that different from what we're always doing as artists, which is trying to articulate our work and get people to care about it. And so it's really just another form of that at the heart. But anyway, we'll get into things, but that's kind of where I'm coming from, and my feelings about it is that really anyone can do this. And, you can, like, I do really complex grants for work, but the kinds of things that I've learned in my work has been really applicable in helping me to get support as an individual artist as well. So for this workshop, what we're going to do is explore the basics of grants for individual artists. So there are a lot of different kinds of grants that we'll get into a little bit, but our focus for this is really going to be like you are applying for a grant as an individual, and for like an artist grant as an individual. That's our limit that we're going to, like, our parameter. And then we're going to look at what goes into a grant application. And I have a bunch of example pieces that we'll look at, talk about do's and don'ts of grant submissions. I have a lot to say, and then think about how to get started, if you're ready to get started. So, okay. For some reason.
Lily, can I ask a question? In the chat, yeah. One of the attendees is asking if the slides will be available, because otherwise they're going to be writing furiously. So,
so good question. The slides are not going to be available after the presentation, but I am going to put together a sort of abbreviated version. The reason that they're not going to be available is that I have so many examples from working artists that I really want to, they've given me permission to use it for the presentation, but I want to be respectful to that and not disperse those afterwards. So I'll provide an abbreviated handout this week for it, but yes. Okay, also sounds like not everyone is muted. If we could all just take a little bit and take a second, make sure you're muted. Okay. All right. So I started to allude to this before, but just getting on the same page. As artists, you're constantly pitching yourself to a variety of sponsors. This is when you get into grant speak. Sponsors, this could look like submitting visual work to galleries, submitting written work to journals and presses, contacting bookstores to set up readings, contacting venues to book performances, submitting self-tapes for auditions, applying for artist residencies, submitting work for prizes, query letters. Some of you even put some of this in the chat. Somebody said applying for artist residencies. So grants are just another pitch. You are already pitching yourself. You already know the fundamental part of this. You have the foundation, which is that you are an artist and people should care about what you do. You care about what you do. It's important. And so I think that not only can you do this, but submitting grants regularly, or just, submitting yourself regularly, submitting your work, every time you do it, it's going to clarify how you pitch yourself. I'm sure some of you have already had this experience where maybe you tried to articulate something about a project, and suddenly you got an idea for the project or something, like it becomes this cycle where it gives you something, and it also, can give you money. It can give you a reason to try something new. Sometimes grant guidelines are going to say only for collaborative works, or only for, works about this theme, and it might prompt you to make something you wouldn't have made otherwise. So there are a lot of benefits to doing this, and a lot of things that it builds on that you're already doing. Hope that makes sense and bolsters you a bit. I also will say I tried to make this presentation as beautiful as I could, because I know the subject matter is kind of dry for a lot of people. So I hope that you enjoy at least looking at pictures of flowers. Okay, starting at the beginning, grant basics. What are grants? Grants are sums of money awarded by nonprofits, personal and corporate philanthropies, and institutions like museums and universities. All of these could be sponsors, to applicants to support their work. So very basic definition. Grants are sums of money given by some sort of institution to individuals or applicants, organizations, whatever. For artists, this means that grants can help you attend a residency, rent a theater, furnish supplies for a sculpture, hire audio engineers, etc. Grants can be awarded to individuals or to groups or to organizations. Grants can be for small amounts of money or large sums. They can be for specific projects or for general operations. Okay, so in general, there are two, like as concerns us, as concerns individual artists, there are two general grant types. One is a general support grant, which is going to be the grant that helps you to keep the lights on. It just funds the normal day-to-day stuff that you do. So it could be, any sort of recurring expenses, or the example I used is maybe you could use rent, or use the money to pay rent on a studio space, or purchase supplies, or keep people on your payroll if you're, if that applies to you. And then project-specific grants. So these are project-specific or restricted grants. Restricted as in there's real limitations, very clear limitations of what you can do. So they're designed to support artists to bring a particular vision to life. So that means that you can only use the funds you receive to accomplish a concrete goal that you set out in your application. For example, you might receive a grant that is specifically meant to support you as you take your solo show on a cross-country tour. You could use the grant to cover expenses like transportation related to the tour, but perhaps not your regular expenses like studio space in your hometown. Okay, are we good on that? Is that clear to everybody? The two general types? Okay, cool. All right. Cool. Okay. All right, and then just a few examples that came to mind for me. So general support grants, since we're in New York and I'm in Rockland County, the ACOR's in Rockland County, these are specific to this area. But anyway, so general support grants would include the New York Foundation of the Arts Artist Fellowship. That's $8,000. You're going to see this word unrestricted. Unrestricted, that means, it can go towards all kinds of non-project specific costs. And then National Endowment of the Arts. I'm a writer, so I tend to know the writing grants. But then also Arts Council of Rockland. They just closed their most recent artist support fund, which is a wonderful thing that people in Rockland County should apply for. And then we have our project specific grants. So if you're around this area, if you're in Rockland or Westchester County, hopefully you know about Arts Westchester's Arts Alive individual grant, which can give up to $2,500 for projects that engage the community. And then this was one that I found trying to kind of get a different medium in here of the Media Arts Assistant Fund for artists. So this is to support new media artwork for artists living in New York State. So project specific, right? So project specific versus general support. Hopefully that gives you a good sense. Okay. So then what goes into a grant? In general, grant applications are going to include some combination of the following, and we're going to spend a little bit of time with each of these. So first, general information about who you are. Second, a statement about what you do, why you do it, and what you've accomplished so far, sometimes accompanied by a CV. Third, a work sample. Fourth, a statement of purpose. Answering the questions, why this grant right now? What will the funds allow you to do? Sometimes you're asked for a project timeline, especially for project specific grants. Proposed budget and budget justification. Again, not always. You don't always have to submit a budget depending on the grant, but that tends to be a common component. And letters of support. Letters of support you're more going to see in a project specific grant. But okay, so this is kind of your outline for where we're going. If you kind of this is where we're headed. We're going to go through these and break them down. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Who are you and what do you do? A lot of you answered this in the chat. Thank you. Thank you for answering my prompt of what kind of artist are you? So we have people from all different mediums, which is very cool. And so essentially what I want to show is that this question, who are you and what do you do? This is your baseline. So the foundation of any individual artist grant application is a strong sense of what you do and why you do it. So a statement about what you do, why you do it, and what you've accomplished so far is foundational to every submission you will ever do. You can think of this as your elevator pitch, which can be applied, expanded, adapted, and cut up for a variety of audiences and purposes. And so do you, like, just by show of hands, do people have this statement? Do you have this, like, and not to like show me right now, but do you just have a document that you know where that is? Yes. And it has this information on it. Okay, right. So most of you probably already have this, which is great. And I recommend keeping an evolving document that you can use whenever you need it. So now to get into kind of what we call this. So I'm calling it, in this case, the personal statement. So it's generally composed of a biographical statement and an artist statement, though it can take a lot of different names and forms. Like I'm sure you've sometimes only prompted for an artist statement, or sometimes only prompted for a biographical statement, or sometimes there's word constraints or whatever. But in general, a biographical statement is going to include that first thing that you put in the chat. What do you do? The background. How did you learn what you do? Prior support. Who has supported your work in the past? Accomplishments. What prizes, contests, recognitions have you earned? And then service. How do you engage with your community? Oops. And I keep trying to move around my my Zoom so that I can see you all. So sorry, I keep moving the slideshow. Okay, so then we've got this artist statement. So the artist statement, this is, first you say what you do again, but it's more of like, where do you find inspiration for your work? What themes do you explore? What are you interested in? So this is getting into the content of your work as opposed to the accolades of your work or the kind of fruits of it. This is the more, I don't know, I want to find a good way to say this, or I want like a metaphor or something here of like the metaphor of the biographical, which is really dry, and then the artist statement, which is more kind of, it's more creative and colorful. Okay. So I'm showing you mine first, just to give you a quick sense of this, which you'll see, this is what Dorothy read, right? My biographical statement, which I'm not going to read. I feel like it would be kind of embarrassing to read, but you know, all those things are there. All those things are there. Like if we go back, arts medium, what do? I'm a poet. How did I learn my medium? It's not exactly in this order, but I got an MFA. And who has supported your work in the past? Breadloaf, Arts Westchester, Maine Writers and Publishers, and prizes, contests, recognitions, and service, you know. So all of that's in there. Basic components. And then artist statement, which I wrote, this was, I got one of the Arts Westchester grants, and this was part of my statement for what this was basically what I used as my artist statement of what I was saying that I did. So I wrote mine in the third person. You can write in the first person or the third person. I prefer the third person, but anyway, Greenberg's work revolves around American feminine identity. Her debut collection employs narrative and lyric poetic forms to explore maternal lineage and embodiment. Greenberg's manuscript in progress investigates who and what God is through a queer feminine lens. The poems are informed by Greenberg's lived experience as a queer woman raised in the Bible Belt of the American South. The poems examine connectedness to one another, especially family and the earth, and the vitalness of faith in the unseen. Formally, these are lyric poems of voice that implement tonal variety, dissonance, persona, and figurative language. So why am I reading you this? Because I'm trying to show that here's just the difference between the artist statement and the biographical statement. The biographical statement is very dry. It's just facts. And then the artist statement is a little bit more, that one can really change application to application, depending on what you're pitching and what you're interested in. And so this was because I was trying to get funding for a particular book project. So I want to talk about my last book, and then I want to talk about my current book and why I'm writing those, what I'm interested in. So
I have a question, Lily.
Yes, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I have two questions. One is
Okay.
you addressed it, but I had always heard that the artist statement should be in the, I. Do you really think it's okay, acceptable to do it in both in the third person?
I think it's fine. Personally, what I think is that consistency is good. And because I was pairing my biographical statement in this particular example, I was pairing it with the artist statement. And they were actually in the same section of the application. I thought that it was actually going to be more weird if you read my biographical statement in third person and then my artist statement in third person. And so had they been maybe separated in the application, maybe I would have written it in first person, but it was a contextual choice. I will say, I think the argument for doing the artist statement in the first person is that it is a personal, you're talking, people I think want to feel an I. They want to feel that individual there. And so that is, I would say that's an asset of doing the artist statement in first person, but it doesn't make it required.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's good to know. And just the other thing that popped out was like how you have your website there.
Yeah.
Like that's cool to put your website like right on your biography. I mean, I never did that. It never occurred to me.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have websites. I'm sure a lot of you do. I'd say, if it's allowed, put it in your bio. That's a way for people to learn more really easily. Just make it easy on your audience to learn more about you.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe if it were something where someone was like giving my introduction at a reading, I wouldn't necessarily want them to like read out my website or something if it was like a live thing, but on an application, absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for those questions. Okay. I just wanted to give a couple more examples. So, example biographical statement. Would someone like to read this quickly? Anyone? Just so I can have a break from hearing myself talk. No.
I'll read it.
Thanks, Dorothy.
You guys can take hearing my voice. Okay. Virginia Sitz, am I saying that correctly? Is an award-winning printmaker, muralist, and active arts advocate living in, is that Oklahoma City, I assume?
Yeah.
She is the creator and director of Sunny Days Mural Festival, Oklahoma's first and only mural fest dedicated to celebrating female and non-binary artists. She co-founded the Oklahoma-based artist collective Art Group in 2017, which now has over 70 members and is one of the organizers of the Connect Collect Print Exchange, now running its 5th year, bringing together 30 printmakers from all over the world and culminating into an annual exhibition. Virginia is also a teaching artist for the Oklahoma State Department of Education's federally funded Art Tech program, a 5-year grant-funded program that helps develop arts curriculum for rural schools without arts programming, and eventually will be available nationally for any educator to adopt and teach. She has also worked seasonally for the Oklahoma Arts Institute since 2019. Virginia currently serves on the board of the Oklahoma Mural Syndicate, teaches workshops across various art spaces such as Oklahoma Contemporary and Flash Flood Print Studios, has been a mentor in multiple projects such as Art Space at Untitled's Printmaking Mentorship Program and the Fresh Paint NYE Mural Project, and consistently curates various pop-up shows in alternative art galleries and non-traditional spaces. Her work has been featured in Art Focus magazine, Barnstorm Literary Journal, Oklahoma Gazette, the Tulsa Voice, and the Inspiring Conversations OKC, and Whatcha Makin' podcast. You can find more of her work on Instagram at Virginia Sites.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the longest thing that I have in this whole PowerPoint. Thank you so much. Okay. Why am I bringing this up? I am bringing this up because I think that what I really like about this is a friend of mine, Virginia. What I think is great about this biographical statement is that not only does Virginia state the various things that she's involved in, she defines them for you. She doesn't make it hard. She doesn't, just say, here's this list of things that I'm in. She, talks about this, for example, this Connect Collect Print Exchange, now running its 5th year, bringing together 30 printmakers from all over the world and culminating into an annual exhibition. So I think, something to take away from this that I could certainly be doing more of in my work is, again, making it easier for people to understand what it is that you do by explaining the context. If you're involved in different communities, add a little phrase to define, what is that community? Why is it significant? What is it doing? And that's just another thing to consider, not just listing the things, but also helping your reader to understand them. Okay. So, and then go ahead.
I just want to ask a question. You don't have to go back, but were those all links in her biography?
Yes, she linked every single one of them. So,
just curious.
Yeah. So that's another thing, that's a strategy. I guess it's all kind of especially I think with statements like this, it's not like there's certain things that are allowed and certain things that aren't allowed, unless you're looking at a very particular application that lays that out. So, here's someone who's listing their Instagram, who's linking every group that they're involved in. That's just an idea to try if you were interested in it. Okay, so then those were a couple of I showed biographical and artists for myself, but Virginia's was a biographical statement, and here is an artist statement that is from an artist friend of mine. Can I get someone else to read? Anyone? Yes, Lisa. You'll just need to unmute whenever you get a chance.
Okay, I was trying to unmute, sorry. Art making for me is an act imbued with love. It serves as an exploration, allowing me to plunge into the intricate layers of my being. Through my work, I engage in the authentic unveiling, naming, and understanding of the collage that defines both myself and the shared world we inhabit, as I participate in the imagining and creating of better worlds. My artistic practice is contemplative, slow, intuitive, and playful exploratory in nature. I explore the possibilities of a variety of materials, often found, overlooked, and or discarded materials, patinated by time, that I layer, stitch, deconstruct, reimagine, and reconstruct to potentially bring a new thing into existence. I build mixed media collage works that point toward alternative ways of viewing and knowing human experiencing. I sit with questions and draw upon memory, poetry, literature, socio-political realities, theology, and history to create mixed media collages and paintings that reflect the textured ideas, complex realities, emotions, dreams, longings, questions, possibilities, and beauty that makes up the storied layers of the human experience.
Thank you. Thank you. So I liked this one because I think it's so lyrical, and but also we do get these, I build mixed media collage works that point, it's like you get the concrete thing that she does, and then that points toward alternative ways for viewing and knowing human experiencing. So I think maybe something to think about is the balance of concrete and abstract. You know, you can have some, like, you want to really be describing the real thing that you do. It can't just all be like ethereal language, but having a little bit of that metaphysical part of like that reimagining alternative ways for viewing and knowing human experience, like that makes it land in a different way. So, you know, something to consider as a strategy. I'll read this one. This is another artist statement for a visual artist, Ali Wallace. My work indexes places through the compression of photographic sources and the documentation of the less concrete, sound, movement, and the sway of light across surfaces. Through the forms of painting, drawing, and textile, the completed surfaces memorialize moments. I am combining planes of information through stencils, thin lines drawn with ink, and areas of thick geometric painting that allow for both rest and support in the compositions. The sites I work with range in scale from the cast shadow of a glass of water to more expansive landscapes, spaces, and memories. So another strategy piece to note here is thinking about kind of using examples of work that you've done or things that have inspired work for you before, like what she has here in her the sites I work with in scale and what they range from. So you get an image from that, the shadow of a glass of water. You can see that in your mind's eye to more expansive landscapes. Okay, so I also included a musical artist one. And it sounded like we had a few musicians here, but I won't read this one. I'll just give you a chance to look at this on your own. This I actually found on an online, it's like a grants for artists kit online that I still have the link to that I'll share with you. It had a bunch of great examples in it. But anyway, this one also has that physical detail, right? Having studied piano, trombone, and folk art, but also I'm drawn to folk music. Why I like it as a universal form of human expression and a universal means of human connection. Yeah, so there's heart in the artist statement. Okay, does anyone want me to stay here longer, or can I move ahead? Okay, great. Okay, one last one. This one's kind of for fun. Also, only because a friend of mine posted this on Facebook like last week, and I messaged him and asked him if I could, if I could put it in my presentation. I'll read it. This is a poet. You can definitely tell it's a poet. From David Groff. David Groff writes with the urgency of elegy, from the loss of parents and friends to the persistence of AIDS, HIV across generations. He speaks from a skeptical Christian tradition leavened with blunt Buddhist hopefulness, exploring our connections with the irksomely finite people we love, how we might shoulder past our guilt and grief to sidle into significance, reweaving our beliefs into garments that warm us, and how we might be generative, if not always procreative, part of a larger system of matter. As poet in person, he tries to live in suspense, waiting for the next mortal thing to happen. Okay, so that's a little like over the top, but I share that because I love that he's having fun with this. It really could be a fun thing. I think it's worth spending the time to make it beautiful. If you know, like your artist statement is part of people's understanding of you as an artist. Okay, so just a few tips and tricks on what to do. Yes, Helene, very much a reflection of Groff's poems. Okay, tips and tricks. Let's say you need to write a statement, or you just want to remake your statement. You're tired of your statement. First of all, look at what other people are doing. Look at websites of artists you know at all different career levels, probably in your own medium is best, but see what components they've included and try creating an imitation version that employs their structuring, ordering of information. Do you know what I mean when I say imitation version? It's almost like you would do Mad Libs with their stuff. It's like if they're saying, like if they have that they work in these mediums, you like take out theirs and you put in yours and you go from there. Just a way of generating. So then second tip, work from your CV, resume, and also like keep those in, you want those to be parallel. You want them to be telling the same story of your accomplishments, but just in different ways. And yeah, right. So the narrative is or the statement is a narrative shorthand form of the CV. You honestly might find as you're writing a statement that maybe some part of your CV could be described a little bit better. Could be, you know, in whatever abbreviated form it is. So that might be informative for you. So I'm recommending write in third person, particularly for the biographical statement. And I think, you know, another advantage of this is that, especially if you're a sponsor and you're looking at so many statements, it is kind of more memorable. Like you want them to get your name in their head. And when you're repeating your name in your statement, that is one way of getting your name in a sponsor's head. So I'm recommending that. Other people are going to recommend other things, and there's probably occasions for first person and occasions for third person. I tend to go towards third person. So and then my last suggestion for the statements is to read it aloud. Read it aloud if you can, to get some sentence variety in there. You really only have a few sentences to make it count. So to catch someone's attention, so make it count. Okay. As you know, another way of saying this is make it beautiful. Make it something that is memorable and beautiful. Okay. Any questions about statements before we move on from there? Was that helpful, seeing different statements in different mediums? Or is that like, do you feel like you've looked at a million statements and okay, getting some thumbs up, some neutral faces, which I accept. Okay, so adjacent to the statement of, whoops, sorry, I keep doing that. Adjacent to the statement of your personal statement is the statement of purpose. So the statement of purpose is answering the question, why do you need these funds? Okay, it's what I call the art of persuasion. In general, a statement of purpose is about a specific project or opportunity in the future. It explains what you propose to do. This can be a research project, course of study, or professional experience. And so a proposal, which is what you'd be, a proposal is basically a statement of purpose, or a proposal is like your whole grant application, but the whole thing is really persuasive writing. You need to convince the committee that what you propose is important and that you can do it. The selection committee will want to know that you can carry out what you're proposing with the allotted amount of time and the given amount of funding. So what you propose must be feasible. And yes, while all proposals have features in common, always address the specific guidelines provided by the program. So this is true for both project grants, project specific grants, and general support grants. You're pretty much always going to have to say, why do you need this money? And so this is where you really, this is your kind of moment to persuade in a really direct way. And also, the best thing for you, the thing that's going to help you the most is the guidelines themselves for the grant opportunity. They're going to tell you exactly what the sponsor wants to fund. And all you need to do is show them how perfectly what you're doing matches what they want. Like that's kind of, that's what you need to do over and over again. Okay, so the statement of purpose, here's what questions you would be answering. What exactly do you intend to do during the project period? Be very detailed. How exactly will you do it? Be very detailed. Why is this grant necessary for you to get it done? Again, provide specific details. And then I am adding a caveat here. Sponsors understand that all aspects of this are a proposal, as in you are projecting what you think will occur. Things change, and that's okay. You can sort out any changes with the sponsor when that time comes. But for now, to the best of your ability, set a plan in place. And like really, so I'm gonna, all right, I lied. There are some there. This is probably about as long as the other one. I will read this. So I think it's best to see it in examples. This is another one from that packet that I referenced, but it's talking about the Vermont Studio Center, which is a literary residency. So this is what this is saying. A residency at Vermont Studio Center provides a shared apartment, all meals, and a private studio for creative work. So they give a definition of what they're trying to do, and then funds from this grant would give me the opportunity to experience those things. And I've been invited to a residency. So this person's already applied, they've already been awarded it, and they have some funds to cover a third of the cost. And that's not a common thing. They're helping their sponsor to understand not everybody gets into this program. Not everybody gets any kind of funding. And I was in the top 30 chosen. So this is also, it's kind of like, this is the appropriate place to sort of brag. Okay, without the funds from this individual artist grant, I will not be able to attend. This is like your money sentence that you need some version of. That's like I saying very explicitly, I need this money. Without this money, I won't be able to do this, or I'll be limited when I'm doing this, or whatever. And it really should be that direct. Most of my writing to this point has been done on retreat of one kind or another. And they describe why this is important for them to go. And yeah, so, and then they also, this is like the second part of it, they give a schedule. They give, this is exactly what you would be funding, dear sponsor. And then this is what it would give me in return. Attending this residency will not only give me the time and space to create more poetry, it will also advance my career by allowing me to add such a prestigious activity to my resume. So even though this is for poetry and a pretty specific example of attending a residency, I really think that it's applicable to, I mean, a lot of different, like this has all the components that you would really want in a statement of purpose, I think, where you just this level of detail, what that communicates to a sponsor is that you've really thought the whole thing through. You've really done everything that you can do up to this point to make a clear path for yourself. A sponsor wants to feel like they can just give you the money and everything will go. Like it's not just going to sit there, or you're not going to have to like then set up a bunch of things. You want them to believe that you've already set stuff up. Okay. Any questions from that example or from this statement of purpose so far?
Would you be willing to go back to it?
Yes,
for
yeah,
like
I can go
30
back.
more seconds. Mhm.
Yeah. Do you want this slide or you want the slide before?
The one before. Mhm.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any questions? Is this helpful? Is this like new information for anyone? Mixture.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay. All right. So a few guiding questions for a statement of purpose. These are some that I came up with, but if you know, so sometimes a sponsor will have very specific questions in like the part of the application that's basically statement of purpose, where they're like, why do you want these funds? And maybe they'll ask, and how will you make this happen? And what resources will you need? Maybe they will ask those guiding questions. Sometimes they don't, in which case you need to be able to give like a pretty detailed, like maybe they'll just say, why do you need these funds? But you should answer more than that question, you know, like, and here's just some other questions to consider while you're answering that. All of these would make you look great. How does this project connect to, depart, or build on past work? How will your work and career advance or develop? Why is this project urgent? What makes the project important? How will you make this happen? What resources will you need? How will you get them? When will the project take place? What steps are you taking to make it possible? Where will you make it? Where will it be exhibited, performed, or published? Okay, a question. Is there ever a time to include photos or videos of your connection to the community? Yes. Yeah, that's a great question, Colette. Thank you. It just depends. Sometimes, I mean, that to me is where linking to a website is really great. But sometimes in terms of like work samples, you can give, like I've had opportunities where they were like, as part of the application, you could give like photos or media of past things, like they made it more inclusive than just submitting your work sample. You could also give, you know, media representations, but that's really going to depend on the sponsor. So the sponsor will usually make it clear of like what kinds of things they accept in the application, and they may or may not accept that. But that's a great thing to show for yourself if you have it. Okay, speaking of the work sample, this is the most important part. Without the work sample, you would not be applying. Okay, really not a whole lot to say on the work sample since you all are doing the work, but just a few considerations for the purpose of the grant. First, put your best foot forward. As much as you can, show your best work. Even if I think sometimes for like for me, I'll talk as a writer, I'm always submitting work to literary journals that I'm excited about and I want to get published. But for the purpose of a grant application, unless you have to submit the work that's like in progress or something, but if you can submit work that's really showcasing yourself, I would say do that. Like to go for what you know is your best work up to date, and and not necessarily the newest, unless they specifically ask for that. Okay, and then be mindful of limitations. This is a really important one: page limits, image limits, and any other specification. And another way of saying this, if a sponsor wants something presented a certain way, i.e. font, image size, etc., follow their instructions. You're going to see that so many times throughout this presentation. Follow the instructions, which is really an obvious thing, but I can't tell you how, just like working in grants and working on multi-component grants with colleagues, we're constantly just having to go back to the instructions, and you just forget things that are in the instructions. You have to, be reminded of them. It can be really easy to miss something. And if you do, the message that kind of comes across to the sponsor is that you weren't so detail oriented, or you didn't, do your due diligence in terms of preparation. So following the instructions is a great way to just like get people straight to the heart of your work and no distractions. Okay, and then similarly, make sure also the sample is relevant. For example, when a grant supports interdisciplinary projects, send examples of a variety of disciplines. Or if the grant is in support of painting, include only paintings. So that's kind of obvious, but if you're somebody who works in a lot of different forms, make sure that the work that you're submitting is appropriate for the application. Okay. So that was really all that I had to say about your work sample. Any questions?
Another question.
Yes.
In another workshop I took, actually I think it was an ACOR workshop, in regards to the work sample, the person leading the workshop did judge a lot of grants, and she recommended having your best image in the beginning and as the last one, because she said the last one, when people are reading the grants, they keep that up while they're talking about it in the group. What is your thoughts on that?
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing it with the group. I think that's a fabulous recommendation. And is definitely, I will say that's totally my strategy when submitting manuscripts of poems, of strongest poem first. And even when compiling a manuscript for a book, I know that publishers sometimes read first 10 pages and the last 10 pages. And so but I think it's probably true in any medium. You really want the beginning to be gripping, and you want the end to be memorable. And that's what you're going for. But thank you for sharing that. It never occurred to me that would be true in other art mediums. So obvious now that I'm thinking about it.
Right, because you think you put it all in the front, but actually she was saying save one for the last, because that's what stays on the screen.
Yep.
Okay.
I noticed there were a bunch of musicians on this, and I just wanted to say that I think I've heard feedback from people in music-related grant panels that the tempo of the piece that you submit actually sort of makes a big difference. Like, you don't want to submit something that's really slow and takes a while to get into, like something with a long introduction. It's good to kind of like edit it down if you need to, and have the drop the needle be where it's like really meaty and kind of a quicker tempo and more engaging for people.
Thank you, Jody. That was fabulous. That is also great to hear. I would not have thought about that, but it makes so much sense that would be pretty gripping to hear right away. And even editing it down, that's a really smart idea. Cool. Any other insights from the group about your work sample or any of the things we've talked about? Okay, thank you. All right. The part that I know everyone's really excited about, we're going to talk about budgets. Is actually anyone excited about budgets? Is anyone curious? No, you're like, okay, we have someone who's curious, maybe excited. Okay. So this is my pitch to you to maybe get you on board for budgets. Budgets can be useful to you. So, okay, the budget is not only a way of giving an idea of how much a project costs. It is that. It definitely is that. It also allows foundations to see how realistic you are about what the project entails. So, you can have this whole thing in your statement of purpose where you're like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's why it's important. Here's how it's all going to go. It's going to be great. But the budget is like, that's like what like solidifies that in a way. Like it's the very concrete element. And, in this, for the sponsor, that's like what they have the most stake in, because they're like giving you money. So they want to know exactly where this money is going beyond the kind of ethereal realm of helping people and saving the world, etc. I also think that these can be useful to, so, they're useful to the sponsor that for that first point. But to the second point, artists can use itemized budgets as a management tool to set milestones throughout the life of a project. So let's say if you're really trying to like do a project, you are at some point going to have to think about what this is going to cost. And so if you did that as part of a grant application, I think that it could really help to, whether or not you even get the grant, you would know exactly what goes into completing that project, and maybe you'd be that much more likely to do it. And then also they can be used as a flexible document to use as check-ins and to update as the scope and timeline of a project changes. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that budgets aren't just this thing that you have to do for your sponsor to make them happy. They can also propel you forward in your own work if if you're open to channeling your imagination in that way. Okay, some basic do's and don'ts. Here we are again with instructions. Do read the guidelines and only budget for allowable costs. And this is a killer, but every grant is different. The allowable cost for one grant, not the same as the allowable cost for another grant. So this is my hot take of the night that hopefully you've heard before, but I don't know. Ask for the full amount is what I'm going to say to every single person who's submitting a grant. And I do want to pause on that for a second, because how many people already knew that? Just by show of hands. Have you heard this before? A couple people? Okay, a few people, but not all the hands went up. So maybe a few people who know. Colleen, can you tell us why you should ask for the full amount?
Well, it actually depends grant to grant to grant. But let's say that the grant is $2,500 and it's a project based. I think it's harder to do for general stuff, but for a project, it's not that you want to pad it out per se, but there's also always hidden costs to anything. And the worst that could happen is that either you don't get it or you get part of it. But if you only ask for a small amount, they may not give it to you. They want to know that you have something that they can sink their teeth into and support. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Thanks. So, yes. So, I mean, that's true. Every grant is different. I think for the purpose of artist grants, which do tend to be on the smaller end of things, I think what I tend to hear from other people is that a lot of time is spent really thinking about budgeting for particular programs or like very specific things that you want to do. And there is also this whole thing of like, you're an artist who has to live. Like, this is, you don't need to work for free on a grant. You can pay yourself. And grants will specify, whether they allow for artist fees or not. But when you can have artist fees, pay yourself. Like, if there isn't, like, that's something that I think is really, it gets sidelined. And it would just be a shame to be budgeting, only for project needs. And like, what if you could have also paid yourself just to be a person? So that's something to really look for, really read the guidelines. And if it's not clear in the guidelines, ask the sponsor if you're allowed to do that. Okay, so, but
I have a question. Can I ask a
Yeah.
follow-up question about that? So it's sort of the equivalent of an administrative fee if it's an organization applying for a grant, kind of?
No, it would not be an administrative fee. So the
No, it's like the
administrative-
equivalent of it is what I'm asking in a way. Does
no.
it tend to be like a percentage of the grant as the artist fee?
It just depends. It depends what the program is. I have an example that uses artist fees that that's from a funded experience that I've had. So I'll talk through that specific example, but you may be thinking about when you're working with organizations, there is something that's called the facilities and administrative fee, or the indirect cost. And that's not something that we're going to get into tonight, but that is a whole thing in grants that that's basically like, if an organization is getting funded to do a program, they would have a certain amount of funding just go towards operational expenses. And that's set aside. Sometimes it's in addition to the program amount. Sometimes it's part of the total cost generally, or it's considered a direct cost line item. But anyway, but for our purposes, we are not going to focus on that. One thing that I do want to say about asking for the full amount is that sponsors are going to cut budgets all the time. They're going to, it's a really common experience to ask for an amount and get less than that. And so I would say, ask for a little bit more than what you need. If you can, ask for the full amount, and leave it up to the sponsor to cut it. If they're going to cut it, like, it doesn't make you necessarily a better or more competitive candidate if you ask for less, is the point that I really want to get across. Okay. Fourth thing, research the general cost of things that you might want on your budget. If you don't know how much something costs, look it up. For example, if you want to include a workshop on your budget, include the actual price listed, or if that information is not available, include the price from last year. Specificity really, really helps. You don't need to cite your sources necessarily, but you can just say, how much things cost, or if you want to estimate, you can. But it's good, as much as you can cite, or as much as you can be specific, that is a really good thing. And then last thing, when you're making a budget, you want to start with your most definite things and then leave room for possibilities. So you want to start with, what do you absolutely need in order to either do your project, or if it's a general support grant, what do you really need help paying for your website right now, or do you really need help with your studio space? What do you need the most? And then go from there. And especially in the event that your sponsor cuts the budget, you want to have your definite things covered first. You want to have a place that you could cut from if you needed to. Okay, don'ts. A lot of these are just the opposite. Do not budget for items that are not allowable costs. Do not go over budget. Don't sell yourself short. As in, connecting to the artist fees, if you can pay yourself, and give yourself a reasonable wage. Forget about the time and effort. Don't forget about the time and effort you are providing, which is valuable. So that's connected to sell yourself short. Don't do either of those. Don't ballpark numbers when there's information available, and don't forget to include program income when applicable. So that means that if you're going to run a program that, or let's say you're generating paintings and then you're going to have a show and you're going to sell those paintings, and this is all going to be like a grant funded experience, it's possible that the sponsor will want to know whether there will be program income. So if they're funding you to make the paintings and the paintings are generating income for you, they're probably going to want to know that, and they will specify it in the guidelines. That's also a really good one to ask a sponsor about, which I'll talk about some later, but always really good to show up to webinars, ask questions. If you don't see something on the FAQs or the or the actual guidelines themselves be reaching out to the sponsor with questions like these, because, you know, it really could mean that, like, what if you could pay yourself? What if you could, you know, what, like, there really could be things that if they don't say that they're not allowed, they really might be allowed. And it's good to ask. And sponsors are there. They are working, they're employed, they're, you know, they're there to answer questions leading up until the grant submission time. Okay. So just a few budget examples. So I started with just a very small artist support grant. And then the allowable costs. So studio rental, workshop space, supplies, equipment, website development fees, transportation fees, costumes, emergencies related to your practice, other needs as deemed appropriate by review committee, which kind of invite, like, if you thought of something that wasn't on this list, that would be something you could reach out to the sponsor and say, hey, what do you think of, like, what do you think of childcare fees or whatever? You know, you can ask about that. So very open, unrestricted. So in this example, I'm going to say my main purpose, which I would outline in my statement of purpose, is to fund the submission of a new manuscript. So here's my little budget summary. For this budget, I'm putting the majority of costs towards manuscript submissions and website fees, which I decided are my definite costs. That's my main, like, see how that matches my statement of purpose? If my statement of purpose is like, this is about a manuscript submission, the majority of the funds are going towards submitting the manuscript. You want everything to tell the same story. So then, however, I'm not exactly sure. So okay, so like I really only need $300 to submit to manuscripts. But I could ask for up to $500, and I can absolutely think of another $200 worth of things that I can spend. This is the kind of, like, this is what I want you to do when you're thinking through grants. It's like, you don't just ask for the one thing. You're like, while I have you here, and this is also connected, like, this is a way of asking for the full amount. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure which journals and contests I want to submit to yet. So I'm just going to list the remaining amount with a bunch of potential options in the detailed budget. So I've got my manuscript submissions. I'm going to do my website costs, which I do every year. And then my journal and contests, I'm putting the rest of the amount in there. And let me show you what my detailed budget looks like. So, oops. Okay. Manuscript submissions. I am listing the book prizes that I am submitting to, and I am listing each item cost. That's the research. I am listing a bunch of different poetry submission things that I could submit to, that I'm planning to submit to, planned submissions. And then I ran, you know, at some point I just said general support for further submission opportunities. Rather than, you know, try and create another $30 worth, I just said, clearly I am doing this regularly. So can I, you know, like this like kind of cushion money. Website cost, that was a set amount. And then I chose a couple of, like, literary awards. This came to $500. I was ultimately awarded $400. And so what did I cut from? Like, I mostly just put it to my manuscript submissions and my website fees, right? That's and this asking for more, well, I think it probably would have been that way anyway, but anyway, asking for more and kind of thinking all the way through prepared me for, like, all situations. Okay, any questions about that first example? Yeah, Lisa.
I'm just unclear. Was the detailed, is that just for your own sake, or did you submit it like that with all those listings of what you were going to spend? You know,
this is what I made on my end. And then I think what I did for this sponsor was I made, I basically took like a screenshot of this, or maybe I made like a print version of it. And I submitted it as a document.
that was the budget, that detailed.
That was my budget. Yeah.
It was that detailed.
It
Okay.
was that detailed. And that's, you know, as more detail in a grant application is better than less detail. It's
Mm.
just gonna, that's gonna make it the most concrete that it could be.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Second example. Okay, let's say I'm a visual artist applying for a project-based grant, arts grant of up to 2,500. Here are the allowable costs this time. Okay, activities, projects, of the activities or projects of the artist fees, marketing, publicity costs, administrative expenses directly related to the project, supplies and materials needed for the project. Okay, so those are the allowable costs. These are the unallowable costs. General operating expenses, operating expenses of privately owned facilities, entertainment costs, including receptions or food. That's a really important one to look at, especially if your program involves an event. Your sponsor may not have food as an allowable cost. Okay, permanent equipment exceeding $1,000, cash prizes, juried shows, fellowships, scholarships, and other awards to students. Okay, so like just based on this list, I wouldn't have been able to do like so many of my things that I was applying for, cash prizes, scholarships, well, not necessarily scholarships, but like juried. I don't know. That probably, for me, that would be like a question to the sponsor of like, do my manuscript submissions count as juried shows? And they may say, yes, that's a juried show in our eyes. So, okay. So goals. My main purpose, which I would outline in my statement of purpose, is to make an art installation for my local library. It's going to be a vibe room with mood lighting and fabric walls. Okay, for this budget, the first thing I need to consider is expenses. What will I need to buy for my installation? I'm gonna guess and budget slightly higher. Caveat or disclosure that I'm like not a visual artist and I've never done anything like this. So that might be a wildly unrealistic budget, but whatever, just humor me for this example. So let's say like I actually like for a $2,500 grant, let's say like I'm aware that the supplies could be $300 and maybe the marketing could be $50. Right? So, okay, just hang with me for a second. So I could feasibly do this project for $350. However, that leaves me with $1,150 left, which I will use to pay myself for the overtime. This number at the bottom, this total should say 2,500. But so what I'm doing here is I'm saying, yes, I could do this project for $350, but if you're willing to fund me up to $2,500, that will pay for my hourly work that goes into executing the project. So I did a little bit of math, though I typed 1,500 at the bottom. Trust me, this is 5 hours a week at $20 an hour for 11.5 weeks would be $1,150. Okay, so I came up with a like wage for myself, came up with a number of hours that I would work, and then ended up asking for $2,500. So do you get what I'm doing here? It's like thinking beyond just like the bare bones of what you need and what you could ask for. And that it's really, I mean, a lot of sponsors are really happy to pay you for your time. But you all will also know or notice that in here, when they're saying here are the allowable costs, so they do say artist fees are allowed, but sometimes they don't say that. And it's just not listed anywhere, and it is allowed, but it just doesn't say that. But anyway, okay. So, one more point on budget justifications. Sometimes you have to submit a narrative with the numbers. That's this is different from your statement of purpose, that this is like truly parallel to the numbers of the budget. It's the story that goes with the numbers. A budget justification is just the written description of each item you might list in a budget. And it describes what each item is and how much it costs, and it justifies why it is being included on the project. So it's like light bulbs for X amount of money to use for lighting in my lighting focused project, whatever, you know. Not every grant asks for a justification, but if they do, just think budget equals numbers and justification equals narrative. Okay. Any questions about budgets? Was that helpful? Was that okay? Did that give you some ideas? Cool. Okay. We're almost to the end of going over these components, and we will have plenty of time for questions and discussions. But moving along to letters of support. So letters of support are another way of showing the sponsor that you have what you need to do this. When and why to include them. Letters of support are often included in more project-oriented grants that involve collaborations or partnerships, particularly with venues or organizations. And basically, if anyone besides you would be involved in making your grant project happen, you should include a letter of support, unless the sponsor says don't. Letters of support show the sponsor that you have adequate support within your community to fulfill the needs of the project. Okay. How or steps to acquire letters of support. So letters of support, if your grant requires them or says that they are an advantage to have, or you can include them and it's relevant to the grant, this is something that really should be started on early, like start early. And what you want to do first is, I mean, after you kind of like brainstorm your collaborations, you would start with a conversation and like try and have like either a phone call or in-person visit or something. And, you know, you want to talk through the collaboration. And in that conversation, you would try and be really clear with your collaborator or partner or venue or whatever, what their role will be. For example, if a venue, will they need to set up chairs? Will they need to provide anything? Like you want to talk about, you really want to talk about it in this kind of like deliverables way of like, here's what I'm going to do, and here's what I need from you in order to do what I'm going to do, is what you want to say. And then, so you want to draft a letter of support for them. This is one of my other hot takes. Instead of just asking them, can you give me a letter that details, can you give me your letter of support after our nice conversation? You don't want to do that because, first of all, you're the one whose name is on this grant, and you're the one who really needs to be thinking through all these details, and you don't want to put the burden on your collaborator to be like writing all this out. And they're doing you a favor. They are being part of your grant. And so first of all, it's a courtesy to like provide all of this in writing for your collaborator or your venue. It's also, it enables you to make sure that your components of your grant are telling a cohesive story. You want everything to be moving in the same direction, and you want, you know, like you want to have your eyes on all the details of the grant. So, but you know, it's not like you're signing it for them or forging anything. You're instead just basically writing, like, it'd be like if I would address the letter to myself or to the sponsor and be like, Dear Arts Westchester, I'm writing this letter in strong support of Lily Greenberg's project, which does X, Y, Z, and here's what I'm going to do as my support. But it's like you write that out for them. You write that up for them and do that thinking for them, so that all they have to do is look at the draft, adapt it, or ask you any questions about it, and then slap it on their letterhead and give it back to you. And like, done. Now that's like a really doable task. And you also want to give them an early deadline. Do not give them the deadline that your grant is due. for example, make it at least a week before the true grant deadline if you have the time. And the letter should be on their letterhead if they have one, and include a signature. If maybe they don't have a letterhead, but like if it's a fellow artist, but it should include a signature. It should be a formal letter. Okay, so here's my letter of support that I included with an Arts Westchester grant. So, and I wrote this and they adopted it. I wrote a draft of it. Okay. So here's what I wrote. Like, I put the date. I said to the Arts Westchester Arts Alive Committee, it is my pleasure to write this letter of venue support for Lily Greenberg's poetry project. And then they actually added this in, which was very nice. This is from Christine at the Nyack Library. A little bit of narrative of like how we know each other and how our programs together were successful in the past, which was really, really great of her to include that. It wasn't really required, but she included that. And then I think I had something really short of like, Lily has run programs before at the library. And anyway, so given Lily's history at the library, it would be wonderful to have her back as a featured author. And then some details. The structure of the event will be a reading followed by a Q&A. It will be held in the community reading room and will be free and open to all. Our plan is to hold the event in the spring of 2024. Oops. Sorry. Okay, the library will assist with promotion through flyers, the quarterly newsletter, and our weekly email announcements. So this is going to kind of be redundant to stuff that I'm saying in my project, but like what the sponsor wants to see is that people who are involved in your project, they're saying the same thing that they're going to do that you're saying is going to happen. Like, you want all that to match. All that needs to say the same thing. This might really sound obvious, but when you're doing it, it's so easy for this stuff to get disconnected. And so I think that, having a mind for it, having an eye on it is helpful. Okay. Oh, is somebody unmuted or? Okay, no, we're good. All right, so those are the components. And now this is, now it's ready to submit. We all know what's coming. We all want to submit grants. Here's how to begin. Okay, first and foremost, finding grant opportunities. And I would actually love for people to chime in here and tell me where you find some things, because maybe we can give each other ideas. But the best place to start with identifying grants that might be a good fit for you is in your own community. So that's kind of what we can do in real time. But also, look for local arts organizations and see if they list grant opportunities. ACOR lists grant opportunities. Arts Westchester lists grant opportunities. A lot of organizations do. And look at other artists in your community, see where they've been funded. Constantly, I'm looking at what other people are doing around me and trying to get some ideas of like, oh, maybe that's somewhere I could submit to or whatever. And then the key thing you want to look for, the most important things you want to look for while you're researching is timing. When is the application due? And eligibility. Eligibility is a really important one because you don't, some places do have really specific eligibility. They'll have specific mediums that they only take, or a specific age range, or maybe it's for like specific ethnicities or, specific populations in different ways. So you want to make sure that you're on target there. What I like to do, I keep a spreadsheet with a list of opportunities that I found and deadlines, and I just keep it on a list. Okay, so that's on finding grant opportunities. Can anyone chime in here and tell me where you've found opportunities, if not on this list? Anyone? Or no opportunities among us?
I've found some just looking at other art council websites, not for us to actually apply to, but to provide for our members and artists in the community. So I look at different art councils across the state, NEA, National Endowment of the Arts, NISCA, NIFA, just looking Yeah, just in arts related, but again, it's very helpful looking at bigger art councils who have like more staff and a bigger website and more ability to do that sort of research. So that's where I've been going to try and get some resources.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah, I've also found I guess my video's not up, but I've also found not only opportunities for scholarships as well as grants on women's sites, you know, specific gender sites.
Nice.
Yeah, helpful.
Nice. So if whatever kind of particular group, like population you're part of, definitely finding sites or organizations that support that
Mhm.
particular population. That's a great comment. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Hi.
Hi.
I put one in the chat and I put the link in.
Thanks.
It's the Amber Grant for women.
Oh, nice.
And they also fund for anything small businesses and artists as well. So it depends on the month. And they give out every single month about like up to 30 grand, I think. So 10,000 per each category.
Cool. That is very cool. I've not heard of that. And I will totally look.
I found this via Google, which I didn't see on your list. Like
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's such an obvious one that I totally should have in there. Thank you. That's a good one. Also, I just want to point to Chris Campbell's comment in the chat of checking for hashtags in Instagram using social media. Hashtag open call, hashtag artist grant. That's another great strategy. Cool. Thank you. Okay. So once you found your grant opportunity, I know I'm like totally beating a dead horse, but read the guidelines, read the directions, seriously. And so the guidelines, they're your primary document to help with the grant applications. You'll find all this information of eligibility, parameters, what to include, deadlines, where to submit the grant, which is a really important thing of like, do you need to submit through a portal? Do you have a profile yet or an account yet in that portal? Do not wait until the deadline day to make an account in grants.gov or submittable or whatever. Like, you know, you want to, like, these are the things that you really want to be thinking about in advance. So for the guidelines, I'd really recommend keeping a highlighted version of it that in your files that you can refer to easily. And honestly, this is what I do at work when I'm doing, you know, multi-million-dollar medical grants, which is what I manage the submission of. What I do is I read the whole guidelines, I highlight the things that stick out to me, and then I make a checklist version of the guidelines so that I can go through and quickly identify which pieces do I have, which pieces do I not have. I do that on big grants and I do that on very, very small grants for myself because you just don't want to miss something. And okay, so, and then I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If you have a question not answered in the guidelines, check the sponsor's website for FAQs or reach out to the sponsor to ask. There should be a contact email in the guidelines always. And if the program has a webinar, attend the webinar. Even if you think you know what to do, attend the webinar. There may be, you just never know, there may be information said in the webinar or certain things disclosed about what makes a competitive candidate. And it helps to go. And if it's a Zoom call like what we're on right now, where you can be seen, turn your camera on, be seen, have your name there, like have the sponsor know you. And that is also a positive thing to do. Sometimes it's just a webinar and you're invisible and that's fine. But if you can be seen, be seen. Okay. So you've got your program, you read the guidelines, and now you want to identify your project or your pitch. And so a few suggestions for this. A suggestion for all things is to start early. This kind of thinking takes time to develop. So start percolating on the question as early as you can, working backwards from the deadline. If you could give yourself any amount of time to work on a grant, give yourself 6 weeks. If you like had the choice and you didn't just find out about something that's due tomorrow, like give yourself 6 weeks. I think that is the best amount of time to really be able to think. And this also gives you time to contact your people. If your project will involve collaboration, start those conversations as soon as you can. And this part of the grant process is the part you have the least control over. You don't know, like if somebody came to me and they were like, can you give me a letter of support by tomorrow? I'd probably be like, no, I'd rather go to sleep. But if they said, hey, can we have a conversation about this grant that I'm applying to in 6 weeks? And I wanted to know whether you'd be involved in it. I'd be like, totally, that sounds like a reasonable amount of time. And, that's a personal preference, but I also generally definitely recommend that. Okay, make space for the writing process. This is kind of in connection to the first point of starting early. Giving yourself time to really write something is, I do really think that takes time. Ideally, you're not always going to have loads of time, but if you can make a Word document that has all the questions that require written responses and just draft and have, it's like, you should have it say the question that the sponsor wants, parentheses, the word limit, and then you just draft it. And if you do it pretty far in advance, then you can edit those. You can write more than what you need and you can edit them down, and it becomes less painful than trying to just jam out like a perfect response right away. That's something to really give yourself time on. And then if you have time, share it with a friend, ask for feedback. Or better yet, find someone else who is applying for a grant, maybe someone in this workshop who wants to swap materials, or just wants to swap part of the materials. And it's like, hey, I'll send you my statement, my personal statement, if you send me yours. And, this could be a way of making things mutually beneficial. Okay. And then, so on the written portions, a few tips. First of all, avoid jargon. And if you have big terminology in your work, or you do something niche that people don't necessarily know what that is, define it and assume that your reader doesn't know. Use the future tense when you're pitching something. This is what I will do. Use the best word, use the most specific language to paint a precise picture of your project. So again, that's something to think about like, sometimes the way that you talk about your project in one setting is going to be different from like the way that you talk about your work among fellow artists is going to be different from the way that you talk about your work to a sponsor. And it's having that audience mindfulness. And this is also where the time part comes in, where you can really think about, like, have your audience in mind and think about, what ways of describing your work might come across best. Use concrete words instead of abstract or general terms. We talked about that balancing of the two in your statements. Use the fewest words. One adjective is better than two. Get rid of qualifiers. You don't need to apologize for anything in your statement, or that should be one bullet. But get rid of qualifiers. They only make you sound unsure. You don't want to qualify yourself or give any hint that maybe you won't be ready for this when the time comes. That's not what you want to get across. Even if you privately are like, I don't know that I'm ready to do this project, that cannot come into the grant application unless you're just you don't want it. But if you're you can privately have your feelings, but you do not disclose that to the sponsor. The sponsor must see confidence. And then reflect the language used by the funder. This is one that I really want to emphasize. If they're saying we're looking for initiatives that are that are reaching diverse populations and are multidisciplinary and they use some other word. You want to say, I would like to pitch to you this multidisciplinary project, which will reach diverse populations. Like, you want to say to them, like equals to equal, like X to X. You want to say to them the exact thing that they said they were looking for. Like, you don't need to try and be inventive or anything. You need them to be able to glance down at a page, which is really what they might do, and to be able to know right away that, like, you're doing what they're looking for. Okay, so reflect the language used by the funder. I should put that in bold. Use strong verbs instead of weak nouns. It's just a writing strategy. Use relatable and accessible language, so avoiding jargon. Okay. All right, we are almost at the end of the presentation. But so let's say you get the grant. It is not over when you get the grant. I just want to say, just a few more things to consider. Like, do not throw away or like remove from your memory the guidelines or like any sort of written materials. There should be documents that you have that's basically like, you should get some kind of contract from the provider, and sometimes that information is in the guidelines. But wherever it is, make sure you keep a copy of what is expected of you, because you are going to have to fulfill that, like, by your contract. So read the fine print, be aware of it, keep a copy of it, be aware of project periods. Most grants require action to be taken. A project should be completed or funds should be spent within a specific window. And don't miss the window. So, you know, if it's saying like all grants need to be, or all grant money needs to be spent by March 31st, 2024, like, put that on your calendar somewhere. Know that like every part of your grant money needs to be spent out by then. Okay, and then be ready for reporting. This usually involves, like, at the end of your grant period, the sponsor is going to want to know how it happened, how it went, what you did. So there's usually some kind of written summary of what you did with the grant, as well as receipts of expenses. So if your grant involves specific purchases, do keep your receipts and be prepared to do that. And then just make sure that you know when all that's going to be due. So that's the kind of thing where if you're just aware of it going into it, this is no problem. But you just don't want to get to the point where it's like suddenly the sponsor's like asking you for a report, and you forgot to spend whatever amount that you would set, you got the date wrong or something, or you didn't save your receipts, or you want them to have a good experience with you from top to bottom, because maybe they'll give you more money down the road, and like, you want to inspire confidence in the sponsor in artists.